Good morning, Shalom. It is a glorious day in the great nation of Texas. Uh, yeah, it's probably isn't even 90 degrees right now. It's wonderful. We're having a cold front, people. Probably be over 100 before the day's over, but hey, the things are getting much more tolerable. It's very nice. Well, last week I taught a message, and this week is going to be a follow up to that message. I went through the very technical stuff and talked about all the meanings of the words and all of that stuff. And I felt like this week maybe we should talk a little more about the practicality of it and see if I can make it a little less nerdy. That may not happen with me, but I will try to do something along those lines. So, if you guys are ready, I'm going to pull out something very Christian. I found this, borrowed this, I should say, little. It's a Bible. It says Holy Bible right on top of it, so that must be what it is. And I actually had to go to the front of the book and look up the little. Let's see, the book. It says the books of the Bible. It has this list on it, right? And I had to look up and see what page it was on to find this. I knew it was in here, but I didn't know where it was. So, anywho, I am looking. Why does it say Colossians? Well, I'm in the right place. I thought it was Filipinos or something. What's the name of that? No, it says Philippians. Okay, Colossians must be the next. Yeah, that's the next one. Okay. Anyway, I'm looking at chapter 4, and I want to read this because I want to show you, to the one degree, how wrong this book can be, this Christian Bible, and on the other hand, how right it can be. Uh, if you are Jewish and you're reading this, you can see past the wrong and really get something out of some of this stuff. Some of it's, you'll be like, what? But some of it's pretty good because it's based on the Jewish Bible. So it's real good, right? But I'll show you how right and how wrong it is. It's just going to read through verse 9. It's real short. It says, well, I'm not going to start at the beginning. That's not what we need. In verse 4, it starts off, rejoice in the Lord always, and it's capitalized, which would indicate that they were in the Hebrew original, it would have had the name of God. Rejoice in Yahweh always is what it would have said. Uh, Again, I will say, rejoice. Now, he didn't do that for poetic reasons. The reason why you do that is because back in this time period, in the first century CE, they didn't have uh, commas and periods and exclamation points, and they didn't have punctuation. That was not a thing back then. It didn't exist in Greek, and it didn't exist in Hebrew either. Not at all in Hebrew. In Greek, I think they had two things. They had like a comma and a question mark or something like that. I don't even remember now. It's been so I don't read Greek with punctuation in it anyway. So because it's just not necessary if you know how to read Greek. But anyway, it would have used God's name. Rejoice in Yahweh always. Again, I will say rejoice. In other words, in English, the translation really should be rejoice in Yahweh always, exclamation point. And that should be it. That's all you really need. That's the reason why it's said twice, is to put an exclamation point on it. So that's all that would have been written in the original Hebrew text. Then we go to verse 5. Let your moderate spirit be known to all men. Yahweh is near. Okay, here's where it's right and it's wrong. Let your, what did they put? Gentle spirit. No, it's moderate. The word should have been moderate in English. Let your moderate spirit be known to all men. In other words, we're talking about how you present yourself when you're in the presence of other people. Always come across moderate. Moderate people, moderate women don't show their cleavage, period. That's not what moderate women do. Moderate men do not wear tight jeans such that there's a bulge, right? I mean, I'm getting a little in your business here, right? Because that's not what moderate people do. People who follow God, and these were Jews. These letters were written to Jews, Orthodox Jews, Jews who lived according to the law. That's who these letters were written to. Now, what they've become since then is completely different. But when this was written in Hebrew, he was talking to Orthodox Jews, Jews who lived according to the law every moment of their lives. And so some of them would have said, well, duh, when they read that, right? Because that's the way they lived their life. But we were living in a time, or they were living in a time, I should say, back then, that the people around them were not moderate at all. I mean, they were braiding their hair into these crazy braids and all this, wild stuff that you see people do today from time to time. The dreadlocks and all that, not really the dreadlocks, but it's more about the braiding. The people who they get wigs and stuff with all this fancy braiding in it. Moderate people don't do that in this time frame. I should probably say that way, but that God doesn't change, so probably we shouldn't either. Anyway, I'm getting in your business. I know I am. So let your moderate spirit be known to all men. In other words, this is talking about your conduct of life. But then it says, the Lord is near. Oh, so the rapture is going to happen any minute. See, that's where this can be very wrong, because the person who's reading it is making it wrong. This isn't wrong. The person reading it's making it wrong. Oh, he's about to come back just any second now. No, the Jews who wrote this stuff were not looking for a what's that called? Rapture. I think I just said that, didn't I? Not a word to use a lot. They were not looking for a rapture. They had no idea that people would ever think that everyone's clothes are going to hit the ground and their bodies and spirits, I guess both, are going to fly up into the sky and everyone's going to stand around on a cloud. That has nothing to do with this book at all when it was written. It has everything to do with it in its translated form, but nothing to do with the original writing by these Jews. And so when they said the Lord is near, he's not talking about this rapture. He's talking about your gentle spirit, how you act in front of everybody, because God is going to see it. He's really close. So hopefully you get the picture there, how it can be so right and yet so wrong. Again, it's the reader making it wrong, not the writer. So anyway, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Right and wrong. The wrong is, oh, well, God, I want a new car. God, I want a new icebox. And God, I want a new house. And God, I want a new outfit. That's wrong. And that's very, very much Christianity. That's very much the whole name it, blab it, and grab it thing, right? That's the very wrong. But that's the people putting that in here, right? So what's it really talking about? Be anxious for nothing. Well, that's good. You shouldn't be worried about whether you're going to have food to eat or clothing to wear or a place to sleep. Why? Because God is your provider. And whether it's a concentration camp or a fancy new house, God is still the provider. And that's hard for some people to understand. But wherever we are, no matter how bad our circumstances are, God is still going to provide for us. And it may be slim pickings, but it'll always be enough, no matter how skinny we get. But in everything, by prayer and supplication. They're kind of the same thing. Well, literally in Hebrew, they are the same thing. But when you pray, prayer is not for you. And that's where this really can go to the left with modern, particularly Christianity, is that you're not praying for yourself. If you're praying for someone else. Because prayer is advocacy. We're talking about a court of law here. We're talking about the judge, the lawyer, and the person who has been accused, if you will. we're playing the part of the lawyer. We're not the judge. God is the judge. The Torah is the judge, is what the judgment is based on, I should say. And the person you're praying for, whether it's the need for health or the need for finances or the need for peace in their life or whatever it is, you're praying for that person. You're advocating for that person. Why? Because that person doesn't have a direct connection with God like you do if you're Torah observant. If you're Torah observant, you have that direct connection. If you are not, you do not. So then it says with thanksgiving. That's the most important part. If you ever have seen the movie, what's that with Charlton Heston? 10 Commandments. There's a scene in it where everybody's kind of singing these little psalms, and you hear this guy, blessed are you, Lord, who did this, and blessed are you, God, that did that. That's what they're talking about, that very thing. Now, whether you sing it or say it, that's kind of up to you. If you want to sing, blessed are you, Lord, who provides everything. And it's a way of you saying thanks to God for whatever you're thankful for. I have, of recent times, have never said it as much as I have lately. Blessed are you, God, for new shingles. Blessed are you, God, for new electrical wire. I'm for a new house. I mean, it's unreal how much I'm saying that these days. But I am so incredibly thankful in spite of all the bad stuff, the people, all the destruction they did to our property and all the destruction they did to our new home. So I'm kind of mad about that. Well, I am mad about that, not as much as I was when it happened, but I'm still mad about it, right? But at the same time, I have never been so thankful in my life for God's provision, because sometimes the good and the bad just kind of are a mixed bag, all at once. And then other times it's just all good. Then other times it's just all bad, right? We all know this. We've lived this, but we should always be thankful. And it's the most important part. It's why it's actually said last, not first. And let your requests be made known to God. There again, we're going into, oh my gosh, I want a house. I want a blah, blah, blah. No, your requests are for somebody else. Now, if you can phrase a request in the form of a thank you, I shouldn't put those things in your head, right? So it goes on, and the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Messiah Yeshua. Finally, brethren, this is where I'm really trying to go to here. Whatever is true, it says, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, a good report, if there is any excellence, and if anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things, or think on these things, meditate on these things. Okay, that's good enough. Meditate on these things. The right and the wrong. The wrong. When I first read that years and years ago, going to church, I was Jewish born and all that stuff, but raised in church. And years ago, I read that, and I was going through a hard time in life, and I couldn't get my mind off of, my wife had just left me. She'd taken the children. I didn't know where she was. I was having nightmares at night. Bad things were happening to our baby because she left right after Jessica was born. And I mean, right after, like within 2 weeks, she was gone, and I had no idea where they were. So I was really having horrible nightmares. And because of that, I wasn't sleeping. I didn't want to go to sleep because I knew if I went to sleep, I would start having nightmares. And these were worse than coming out of the military. They were much worse. So I read that. Somebody was trying to comfort me, I think, and pointed that out to me. And so I read it. And so I spent a lot of time and effort trying to think of good stuff. well, the sun comes up every morning in the same place and we can always depend on it because God put it there. And where is my wife? I mean, you just drift right off to the bad stuff. And the rain is good because it waters the land and it makes the flowers to grow and the crops to grow. And how is my baby doing? Dang it, I did it again. And I thought maybe if I kept doing it and kept trying to work at it and work at it and work at it, that I would be able to train my mind to think on good stuff instead of bad stuff. And after months of just working and working and working on this, I really discovered that no matter how hard I tried, I spent way more time thinking about the bad stuff than I did the good. I was failing miserably. Why? Because that's not how it's done. That's the wrong of it. So today, I want to focus on the right of it. And so going back to what I spoke about last week, we started off with, "Oh, taste and see that Yahweh is good. Blessed is the man that trusts in him." Well, trust is a big problem for most people. Most people have big trust issues. And most of the time, they don't even know it. They have no idea that they have a trust issue. But they do. Spouses don't trust spouses. The man says, "Hey, I'll fix that plug." And the wife is like, "Oh my God, you'll get electrocuted." Instead of, "Oh, well, if he says he can do it, he can do it." That's a trust issue. It's not a massive one unless the guy's a total dum-dum and going to not only fry himself, but burn your house down. I mean, sometimes that's more being realistic than lack of trust. And then sometimes the guy says he'll do something, the wife knows good and well that means he's not ever going to touch it. So sometimes, your lack of trust is founded, I should say. But a lot of times it's not. And it may be more often than you think. So spouses have trouble sometimes trusting spouses. And if you have that problem, I promise you, I guarantee you, it's going to go without question. You have a trust problem with God. If God is part of this union, you're not trusting his decision on that part of the union if you believe in that sort of thing. If you're both living out God's law and you're upset, well, he's not doing this and he's not doing that and he is doing this and oh my gosh, and he's doing that and oh my gosh. And if you're pondering all those sort of things, you're not trusting God. What should be is an advocate saying, "God, please help him to see this. Please help him to see. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Maybe I should be." It should be like, "Oh, thank God," because as it turned out, when she took that to the judge and said the very thing she was hoping for, and she never said a word to me, it really works. It really does. If you're living out the Torah, this will work. If you're not living out the Torah, all bets are off. This only works for the Torah observant, and the Bible says it repeatedly. It just isn't translated that way. So, still on trust. When you spend time worrying about how you're going to pay your bills, there's two ways this can go. Are you worried about how you're going to pay your bills because you're frivolous with your money? Because you buy things you really shouldn't be buying, because you eat out instead of cooking food, because that could save you a ton of money, because you drive a car that's too expensive, because you live in a house that's too expensive. Wow, you probably have reason to worry, right? But that's self-inflicted. You did that. Just because you can get approved for a big fancy house doesn't mean you can afford it. And just because you can get approved for some super luxurious car does not mean you can afford it. And there's a lot of people that make that mistake. And then they'll get themselves in pretty deep, and the next thing you know, they're running their credit cards up, and this is very common. It's one of the things that a very high percentage of Americans do. They go in, they buy a house and cars and stuff like that. They're in deep. They use their credit cards to pay up a bunch of stuff, and then they go and refinance the house and bring down the mortgage and bring down the car payment, bring in pay off the credit cards. And what's the next thing they do? Run the credit cards right back up. And that interest is way higher than all that other stuff. And some will get a third mortgage and do it again. That's self-inflicted wounds, and you have reason to worry. If, on the other hand, you do your due diligence, then it's in the hands of God. And if you're worrying in that point, then you know you have a trust issue. It's that simple. With this house, one of the things that we've had to deal with immediately, if not sooner, was the roof. It got caught up in that hurricane that we had a couple of years back, and they had great big ginormous trees, all hanging over the top of the house, front, back. I mean, it was completely under that canopy. Well, several of these limbs that were, and I'm not kidding, this big around, broke off and landed on the house. Got one corner of the front and almost the entirety of the back of the house. Well, they didn't have the money to fix it. For some reason, they did not qualify for help, which I found really odd because they were very poor people. They were very, very ill. Which is why they were poor. They couldn't work because they were dealing with just horrible physical conditions, and they were falling behind on their taxes and all kinds of stuff, and life was just really awful for them at the time, and they couldn't do anything. So what they managed to get done, and I guess their sons did it. I don't know how the father could have, but they were putting tarp and plastic and just anything they could find on top of the roof to keep the water out of the house. Well, they actually did a fairly decent job doing that because there's very little water damage inside the house. Very, very little. But when we got the thing out of there, as they were pulling the trailers out, they just raked the roof of those trailers underneath the canopy and just busted up their trees and busted up the rest of the roof. I mean, they just really messed that house up, the roof part of it. So we had to do something about getting that roof covered because it had been raining every day. It rained every day when they were moving. They had to move it in the mud. So we went out and we got a tarp that was big, almost big enough to cover the entire roof. It was just the overhang part, past the house that we couldn't quite get covered. Well, we got up there, we put it on, we tacked it down, we put some heavy stuff on it to try to help do that. And then the rain was coming, and all I said to God about it was, well, God, we've done our due diligence. We've done everything that we can possibly do. Now it's up to you. And I dropped it at that. Well, the rain didn't come. It was 60% chance of rain. And out here, if they say anything above 18%, we get a toad strangler. So 60%, Noah's Ark should have floated by, and nothing happened. So at this point, it's got all of the underlayment, that all of the wood's been replaced, and it's got the tar paper stuff down on it, and the outer coating of the shingles have started, and then they left and haven't come back. Oh, well, it's still in God's hands. Well, I noticed the other day that part of that tarp, they didn't really fasten it down all that much because it's not as important because they've done so much work, but they haven't done the ridge cap. So if that the tarp flies off of the house in the wind, then our ridge cap is wide open and water's going to get in the house and do some significant damage. So I got up on the ladder, as wobbly as my feet are right now, and as easy as I get dizzy, very easy. I shouldn't be on a ladder, let alone on the roof of a house. But I got up there, I tacked the stuff down properly, I got back off the ladder. The little phone app is telling me that there's going to be this horrendous storm. And again, I said, I've done everything that I can possibly do. It's in your hands now, God. And I left it at that. Well, we didn't have a storm. It's incredible. If we'd had a storm, it still would have been in God's hands. Say we had a storm and it ripped that thing off the roof and the water just came flooding in through the middle of the house. One thing I know, God would have provided us with some new sheetrock. He would have provided us with any lumber we needed for the floors and walls or whatever. God would have provided, and it would have eventually been fixed. There was just no reason for me to worry about that because it's literally in the hands of God. There's nothing we can do. If He's going to turn away the storm, which feels like what He did, I can't say for sure that He didn't. I have no scientific proof, but you don't have any scientific proof that He didn't. So I'm going to give God the glory on that and say that He has protected us until that we can, get the shingles actually on the house. But there's a difference between worrying about something after you've done everything that you can do. Why would you worry? If you've done everything that you can do, there's nothing that you can do that's going to stop a tornado. There's nothing you can do that's going to stop a hurricane. There's nothing you can do that's going to stop the winds and the rain and the snow and the sleet and the whatever. There's nothing you can do. So why would you worry about something like that? Why would you spend time and energy just pumping into all of that negative stuff? It doesn't make any sense if you think about it. And it's the same way when you get into an argument with somebody at work, or you get into an argument with your spouse, or or wherever it happens to be. What good does it do you to just talk about and talk about and talk about and talk about all that bad stuff? And well, by golly, he did me wrong. She did me wrong. They shouldn't have said this. Now I'm going to say that. All that does is tear you down and wear you down and drag you into a pit. It's not worth it. So we got to find a way to learn to trust in God. We've got to find a way to let things go that we have no control over in the first place. Because in the end, we don't really have control over anything. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. And when the Jews talk about good, they're not talking about good versus evil. The only good that exists in the Jewish world from the time of the writing of the Torah till this day is the Torah. It's called the good. O taste and see that Yahweh is good. Yahweh is the Torah. How can you say that? Well, you know what? I watched a movie years ago. I was a young man, and Fess Parker was the star, big burly man, and you know was the all American guy at the time. It wasn't about being bare chested and having the six pack and all that kind of stuff, like it is now. Back then, it was more about how tall you were and how beefy you looked. Like what was it, Matt Dillon or Dylan? You remember the Donna? You know who I'm talking about? Yeah, the guy that was the sheriff in the town with Miss Kitty. Matt Dillon was his character. What was that? I don't remember the guy's name. But he was like 6'4" or 6'6". I don't know what. He's a big old man. But back in those days, that was the all American man. But Fess Parker in the movies said to a man or to his son or whoever, a man is only as good as his word. That was the all American way back then. This was 60s or 70s. I don't remember when it was. But a man is only as good as his word. And that is a very important lesson that is being lost on the youth of today. Oh, yeah, I'll be there. Oh, I'll do this. I'll do that. And they don't do anything. And they don't show up. And they don't text you to tell you they're not coming. Or if they do, it's, oh, grandma's sick again. Or grandma's dying, or I just, my grandma. This one guy told me his grandmother died 3 different times. He just kept forgetting he was using the same excuse. It's like, man. And then the last time he said something, he said that his grandma was sick. Wow. A miracle has been happening with that woman over and over. Anyway, you're only as good as your word. You say that you're going to do something, that is a promise. That's a law of God. You have made an oath to God when you tell somebody, I'll be there at 10:30. That means you better be there at 10:30. And so the wall around Torah that even Christians used to use, is that if you said you'd be there at 10:30, you were there at 10:15. That was the wall around Torah. It came from Judaism, but Christians used to do that. They got it from the Jews. But you always left early and stuff like that, so that you made sure you'd be there if you got caught in traffic or something like that. If, on the other hand, you had a flat and knew that you weren't going to make it on time, you had to find some way to let that person know that something has come up. I've got a flat. I'm over here on the side of the road doing it, fixing it as quick as I can. I'll be there as soon as I can, which was difficult in the times when we didn't have, cell phones to get a hold of somebody. But we'd walk 10 miles to call someone and tell them, and walk all the way back and change the tire. It was very important to us. If we said something, we saw that as an oath to God, because that's in the Bible. That's a law of God. When you say something, you've given an oath to God, no matter how insignificant it seems. I'm going to be there. I'm going to give an offering. I'm going to cook a meal. Whatever it is you volunteered for. If you don't do that, your word is no good. And you've committed sin. And you will pay for that sin. Whether you believe in God or not, you will pay for that sin. So anyway, taste and see that the Lord is good. And for the Christians who hear this and think, well, what do you mean by that? Well, it's in the New Testament. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God is the Word. Or God was the Word, I think it says. But it is the Word. He's still alive. Hello. So anyway, should be is. What's the Word? Well, when the Jews wrote something like that, they were talking about the Torah. God is the Torah because he keeps his word. If God says that the sun is going to come up in the east, does it come up in the west? Yeah, come up in the west and go down in the east every day, it's going to do that. That's that. It's not going to change. If it says, that you shouldn't steal, I promise you, when you do, you're going to pay the price for it. Whether you know it or not, you're going to pay the price. A lot of people pay the price for a lot of things, and they have no clue why their life is so awful. Well, you keep committing these sins against the Torah. Oh, and by the way, in the New Testament, it's in Romans chapter 7, verse 1, I think. I'd have to look it up, but I think it says that every man, doesn't say that Christians, doesn't say that Jews, it says every man. And literally in the Greek text, in every life that he lives, in other words, whether you're alive here or alive after in the next life, is in subjection to, is under the rule of the Torah, he said. Yeah, that's in the New Testament. That's not just old, right? Speaking Christianese here. God is the Word, because when he says it, he does it. And you can count on it. There isn't anything that can stop God. He's not going to get a flat tire. He's not going to get caught in traffic. You know what I'm saying? None of that's going to happen with him. It's absolute with him. With us, well, there's variables in life, but not with him. It's absolute. So taste that. Get a glimpse of that. Try it on for size sometime. Just try to live by the law just a little bit. Just taste it. Stick it on the end of your tongue. You might like it. And blessed is the man that trusts in him. Of course, they write in the masculine that blessed is the woman. Same thing. There's really no difference. So I probably better move on to my next one because it's probably the more important one. So next up we have Proverbs 16:13. Commit your works to Yahweh, and your thoughts shall be established. Oh, you talk about a secret. You talk about the secret to life. It's right here. The answer is not 42. It's Proverbs 16:3. It is the secret to life. Commit your works to Yahweh. I know your Bible says the Lord. And it's all the letters are in caps. That should let you know that they used in Hebrew God's name, Yahweh. And your thoughts, not thy thoughts. God never spoke that way. The prophets never spoke that way. That's nonsensical stuff from Western world, putting thy and thus and thou. It never read that way. Commit your thoughts, or well, not commit, and your thoughts shall, they will, it's an absolute, they will be established. You got a problem with the thinking about the bad all the time and the woe's me, and you got an excuse for everything, and your excuses have excuses for the excuses to the excuses, right? Because nothing can ever go right. Nothing can ever be right. I want to live by the law, but I live in a place where there's all these evil people, and they have all these evil intents, and they have all this evil control over me, and all this blah, 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 blah. You know that people lived according to the Torah when they were in the concentration camp? Yes, they did. They lived according to the Torah when they were in bondage in Egypt for 430 years. They lived under the law under all kinds of awful times that befell the Jewish people time and time again. And if you've never listened to my 3 lessons on the Maccabees, you should go and listen to that, because I go through a long list of all the awful things that have happened to the Jews over the last 5,000 years, and I was only scratching the surface. But you want to get to where you're not like that anymore? Well, the first step is to recognize that's who you are. That you're the negative person. You're the one that essentially is looking for a reason not to follow God's law. That's the way I feel about it. Maybe you can say it's truly not true. Don't do that, because God is near. If in fact that's what you're doing. But, in other words, it's going to hear you saying the nonsense, and you don't want to do that, because lying is not a good thing. Oh, okay. I read that, or I thought I'm out of time. Okay. Anyway, you got to recognize that yourself, if you have a tendency to being the negative person, to seeing all of the negative around you, to seeing all the why I can't, you got to first recognize that you're that person. That would be very helpful. If you can't recognize that, you don't believe you're that person, okay, let's move on to the next thing that's important here. How do you establish your mind from being the negative to being into the positive? Well, it says it right here. Commit your works. Now, let me get my little rolly ball here and see if I can look at that word for works. Yeah, it's exactly what I thought it was. Ma'asecha. From asa, it's a noun of action. It's from the verb asa, that which anyone makes or does, a deed, an action, work, which anyone produces of God, the things which God made with his hands, of man, the work of man's hands. Metaphorically, also of the fruit of anything, what is produced by labor, property, goods. Okay, let me put this real clear because it's not clear here. Your works come right out of the Torah. You don't have works that are not in the Torah. Those are not works. If you're looking into the halacha, speaking to the Jews here, for your works, you're looking in the wrong place. Those are not your works. Your works are found only in the Torah. So if you get hung up trying to figure out how you're supposed to live and what you're supposed to do and so on and so forth, based on that, you're going down the wrong road and your mind is not going to come under control. It's not going to happen. The Torah is full of stuff. You do not commit adultery. That's an easy one, right? You just be faithful to your spouse. That's really, really easy. I don't care what your circumstances is. That's easy. You just don't do the other thing, right? Pretty simple. You're not supposed to steal. Well, that's real easy. Don't steal. What about don't kill? That's really easy. Just don't kill anybody. Don't covet your neighbor's stuff. Well, don't. That's how simple this thing is. Just don't do it. And those are your works. Well, do they go beyond the 10 commandments? Of course they do. Those, in Hebrew, that's the 10 devarim. They are the 10 words, the 10 categories. If it had been translated properly in English and would have said the 10 categories, people would understand the Jewish Bible, or what they call the Old Testament, a whole lot better. Because there are 10 categories of sin, and there are 10 categories of works, and they all fall underneath these 10 categories. And one of the categories is don't kill, one is don't steal, one is keep the Sabbath, and on and on. The 10 commandments, the 10 categories. And when you go through those categories and see them as the header to your categories, you start reading what they call the 613 laws very differently. And it's too bad my mom didn't catch that. He obviously did not catch that because he did not form his categories properly, because he didn't recognize that there were categories. He did a pretty good job given that he didn't have a computer. So his work is actually impressive given that there was no computer. But at the same time, he repeated laws in his numbering. Whoops. Yeah, he'd have the same law in there 2 and sometimes 3 times, and they would be counted as the 100 or it's the 316, if you will, because he was so focused on trying to prove that there were only 316 laws that he couldn't see beyond that. And so he made some mistakes, not huge ones, but he made some mistakes. But if we were to go back and put up the 10 categories and work everything up under the category, that work would have been phenomenal, which, yeah, maybe someday some random rabbi will do that. That'd be nice. And yes, I am working on that. It will, if I live long enough, I'll get that done. It's not one of my priorities in life. But you get under the categories. That's helping your neighbor get his ox out of the ditch. Well, that's, which one would that fall under? Okay, well, you can't give a false witness. You can't hold a grudge. How about that? Because, if you're not helping your neighbor, it's probably because you're holding a grudge, right? Or you don't love your neighbor as yourself, right? I mean, if we start working this stuff out, we'll be able to figure out what category this stuff falls under. And that all falls, it's not some legalistic bondage filled thing that the Christians have come to call it. No, it's basic human kindness. The law teaches us how to get along with our spouse. It teaches us how to romance our spouse. It's in the law. It teaches us how to apologize when it's proper. It's not always proper to apologize. Usually it is, but not always. I mean, there are people apologizing for things they should not be apologizing for because they're afraid that the people on the left are going to get rid of them, and the left gets rid of them anyway. So why even apologize? I don't. Let's stay out of politics. I don't like that stuff. But anyway, so your works are from the Torah, and you need to concentrate on learning what those works are. And I've already given you quite a few examples, right? And if you put your efforts into that, into making sure that your life lines up with that law, guess what you'll do? Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is good, of a good report, if there's any excellence and anything worthy of praise, you will dwell on it. That's what that man meant. And the people that he wrote to knew that. They were Torah observant. They knew this law or this word from Proverbs. They knew it. They knew what he was talking about. And so his words resonated with them. They knew, oh, he's just telling us, just keep doing it. Just keep walking. It's like the parable of Kepa walking on the water. And that was a parable. Whether he walked on the water or not, it's not important to the Jewish world. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I'm not saying he didn't. I'll say he probably did. I mean, you're talking about the king and creator of the universe telling him to come out onto the water. I'm guessing he walked, but it's still a parable. And in the parable, when Kepa began, the guy they call Peter, when Kepa begins to look around and see the storm around him and gets his focus off of the good, the lovely, and the pure standing before him on the water, when he begins to think about, oh, but what if it rains? What if it storms? What if it does this? What if it does that? Well, he had done all he could do because the king and creator of the universe said, come. And so he got out of the boat and he stood on that water. He had done everything he was supposed to do except for one thing. He quit walking. He started looking around and seeing all the bad stuff and concentrating on everything was wrong. And one thing he did not do was keep walking. And so what did Yeshua say to him? Why did you stop walking? Does your Bible say that? No, because it doesn't know the idiom. The idiom. Where was your faithfulness? Where was your faithfulness is a Hebrew idiom. Why did you stop walking? Why did you stop doing the one thing God told you to do? God said, walk. He said, come, which meant come to me. Walk over there. That's all I say to my dog. Come, right? And this is the king of the universe. That's a dog standing on that water. Come. I'm just saying. And he didn't. He started off that way, but he started looking around. Oh, it's so awful. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Well, bloop, down in the water he went. And all Yeshua said was, why didn't you keep walking? Are you starting to get the idea to this incredible secret to life? The secret to life is to control this thing right here. And right here in Proverbs, you have a verse that's telling you exactly what you do to get control over this thing right here. And for those of you who've been down this road of Torah observance for several years now, some have been 5, some have been 10, some 15, 20 years, think about where you were when all this started, when your faithfulness started, when you began to walk this out, and where you are now. And tell me that this thing hasn't started becoming just exactly what you'd want it to become. Tell me that you don't think more about God now than you did back then. Tell me that you don't think more about what is right and just and true now than you did back then. Are you seeing it? Are you hearing it? Are you living it? Shema Yisrael. I'm just saying. Let me try to wrap this thing up since I'm running out of time. Because there's one more important thing that we have to know in all of this. It's in Psalm 34:15. The eyes of Yahweh. I know your book says the Lord in all capital letters, but that indicates that the Hebrew says Yahweh. And the eyes of Yahweh are upon the Christians. No, it doesn't say that. The eyes of Yahweh are upon the Jews. No, it doesn't say that. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous. The righteous, the righteous. And he hears. His ears are open to their cry. If his ears are open, you know that's a Hebrew idiom, right? Because you don't open your ears. Yep, here, let me take the lock off and open up my... No, it's an idiom. His ears are open means that he hears the cries of the righteous. Man, if you ever wanted God to hear you, maybe you should find out what righteous is. Zedekiah. Zedekiah. You say Zedekiah if you want to in the root. What is just? What is righteous? Used of a judge or king who maintains the right and dispenses the justice. Doesn't that sound like the king and creator of all that is? Used of that judge who maintains and dispenses what is right. That sounds good. Hence used very often of God. Who would have thought? As being a just judge, both in punishing and in rewarding. Yeah, see, because you can't have the one without the other. God created the universe and he created it such that the good and the bad are there together. It's something called the resistance. And the resistance resists against everything that's good. Does that make it bad? No, it makes it part of God's perfect design. If we had no resistance, we would not stay on the ground. We would be able to fly. Ooh, how cool would that be? Yeah, but you wouldn't be able to land. And you would fly off into the atmosphere and burn up. So you need some resistance to keep you on the ground. Wow, another secret to life. You need some resistance to keep you grounded. Let's talk about what righteousness really is, what Tzedakah really is. It is only said in the Bible and even in the New Testament, if you read the Greek from the Jewish point of view, realizing that that was originally written in Hebrew, that shouldn't even be in question. But realizing that it was originally written in Hebrew by Jewish rabbis to other Jewish rabbis concerning matters of the Jewish religion and the Jewish God, if you understand it through that perspective, then you know that the New Testament never, ever calls somebody non-Torah observant a righteous person. Never. The Jewish Bible doesn't do it either. The only people who are spoken of as faithful or righteous are the Torah observant. They are the only ones that can be called faithful or righteous. Because righteousness is to live out the Torah. Now, how would a Christian know that I'm telling the truth? Well, it's real simple. You can find it in 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. 1, 3, 4. 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. Everyone who commits sin, it says, is in violation of the Torah, because sin is Torah rebellion. That's the sum total of what sin is and what sin is not, written by a Jewish rabbi who absolutely knew what he was talking about. If you're going to be a righteous person, you have to live according to the Torah. If it says you got to do it, you do it. If you don't, you're a sinner. If it says you don't have to do it, or that you're not allowed to do it and you do it, you're a sinner. But if it says to do it and you do, and it says don't do it and you don't, you're righteous. It's that simple. But it's also something I always feel obligated to throw in here. It doesn't matter how offended you are by something. Let's say you're offended by alcohol drinking, cigarette smoking, and cussing. It does not matter how offended you are by that. That will never be a sin. None of them. Why? Because they're not in the Torah. If the Torah said smoking was, do thou shalt not smoke, well, then that would be a sin, but it doesn't. So no matter how bad you think it is, even given the fact that it can kill you dead, it's not a sin. Because there is literally nothing on this planet that can't kill you dead. Seriously. The cussing, not a sin. It's not a sin. Now, is there a point where it can become sin, any of these three? Yes, there is a point. If you're drinking to excess, we know that excessive drinking is a sin because that's in the law. That's what the New Testament based that commentary on. So we know that if you drink to excess, then you have now committed a sin. But drinking wine every once in a while or a beer here and there, that is not, it will never be a sin because sin is based on the Torah. So if the Torah calls it a sin, then it is a sin. If the Torah does not, it will never be a sin. Period. End of story. We can't go any further than that. So it makes the Torah very simple. You either follow it or you don't. And if you follow it, you are called faithful and you are called righteous. Those are the only people that are given that title in the biblical text, whether it's the Jewish Bible or even the Christian Bible, if you're reading it properly, which means you can't be reading it in English, then you know what righteousness is. And so if you're living that type of a life, look what it just said. Holy cow. God is listening to our cry. So if we're not living this way, what's happening? Well, even the New Testament says, for we know that God does not hear sinners. That's in the New Testament. It really is. I read it for myself. I know it was there. God doesn't hear it. So if you've spent your life living Christianity out or Judaism out in whatever way that's comfortable for you, and you're wondering why God never answers your prayers, well, that might be your answer. Harsh words, I know, but do you want to hear the truth or do you want me to pretend? You want me to put some powder on that or do you want me to just air it out? I just don't do that. I'm just going to give you the truth as best as I know it. Every once in a while I find out I was wrong about something and I'm the first to admit it when I know I'm wrong. I don't admit it when I don't know I'm wrong, but if I find out I'm wrong, I'll sit here and tell you, I misread that. I misrepresented that. I was wrong. Here's what's right. I do that from time to time. Some people like me for that. And some people hate me for that. Because if he's wrong about that, he's wrong about everything. Oh, Lord, what a dumb idea. That's the mentality of a 5-year-old. And they use that in court now. Oh, anyway. So you have the Bible telling you, try it out. Just take a taste of it. Just give it a try. And then it's telling you, look, we can make all this bad stuff in your mind go away and everything come into focus like it ought to. Got caught with not watching my little clock here. So I'm out of time. And I hope that this was a more practical approach to this message. Shalom, shalom, y'all.
The blessing Be'ivrit. Yevarecha Yahweh v'yish merecha. Yahweh panai v'lecha v'hunecha. Yisa Yahweh panai v'lecha v'yasim lecha shalom. And in English, may Yahweh cause you to lie down so that you may rest. May he touch and caress you. May he prepare you for what is ahead. May he watch over you. May he keep you from harm. May he cause goodness to grow in you and take away the bad. May he arrange your life and cause you to flourish. May he cheer you up and gladden your heart. May he cause his light to shine through you. May he show you tenderness, favor, and love in his presence. May he show you kindness and be delicate towards you. May he show you his generosity, mercy, passion, and desire for you as it comes forth from the depths of his soul. May he lift you out of your pit and deliver you from the things that hold you prisoner. May he draw you to his chest and cast his eyes on yours. May he show you his love and desire for you as he cradles you in his arms. May he bear your punishment and pardon you of your sin. May he take you for his bride. May he establish a foundation in you. May he place his name on your heart and mind and make your body his temple. May you be his treasure. May you always be on his mind. May he draw you near and comfort you when you are afraid. May he assure you there is nothing to fear because he is with you. May you and all that concerns you be at peace because he is your friend. Amen.